with the drive.
The 2021 Padres were considered championship contenders following a playoff appearance and an offseason of monumental deals. Instead, the season ended in one of the worst collapses in recent baseball history. Injuries, mid-season slumps, internal issues. It was a mess. A fan base that's been patiently waiting for the city's first major sports championship were promised a World Series contender, only for it to all end in disappointment. An offseason of soul-searching was desperately needed ahead of the 2022 season. But the question was, where do you even start?
You want 8 in a row? You got it. It's a sweep of San Diego.
Right after the season, the Padres fired second-year manager Jace Tingler. Ultimately, I felt like this was a change we needed to make in order to get us on that big stage. We feel like we have a talented roster, and we have a team that should play into October. The decision today reflects that. A statement by general manager AJ Preller. This was the second manager that was both hired and fired by AJ Preller since taking over in 2014. Neither Tingler nor Andy Green had big league managerial experience when they took the Padres job. So it was clear to everyone that the next Padres manager needed to be someone not only with big league experience, but playoff experience as well. Plenty of notable names were mentioned, and none was bigger than former Giants and Padres skipper Bruce Bochy, a veteran World Series winner who was the last manager to take the Padres to the World Series. It seemed like a perfect fit. However, they went on to hire someone completely out of left field. Oakland A's manager Bob Melvin. There was no prior knowledge that the three-time manager of the year was even looking for a new job. But like they usually do in the offseason, the Padres shocked everyone. This team was finally going to be managed by not only a playoff-tested manager, but one of the best managers of the past decade. So this begs the question, who was Melvin going to manage? Well, there was a lot to consider. The batting and pitching groups both drastically regressed between the first and second halves of 2021 as they went from a top 10 team to one of the league's 5 worst teams. One of the most glaring issues was the lack of pitching depth. Yes, the Padres dealt with horrible injury luck throughout the season. But once they needed to sign players like Vince Velasquez and Jake Arrieta, you could sense the collapse was imminent. So, just before the lockout commenced, the Padres made a few interesting moves. As Mark Melancon and Daniel Hudson left for free agency, the Padres signed relievers Luis Garcia and Robert Suarez. The veteran Garcia was coming off a solid year with the Cardinals, while Suarez was an unknown. However, he had a successful 5-season track record in Japan, and was coming off a season with no home runs allowed and over 62 innings pitched. Sticking with pitchers from the NPB, starting pitcher Nick Martinez signed a 1-year deal with player options in the subsequent 3 seasons. Moving to the hitting side, the Padres traded away mid-season All-Star acquisition Adam Frazier to the Mariners for a couple prospects. Also, they acquired Jorge Alfaro from the Marlins, a hard-hitting, strikeout-prone catcher who could provide something different for a catching core that desperately needed some shaking up. Following the lockout, the Padres still needed to add some firepower to the lineup, particularly in left field. They were interested in guys like Chris Bryant, Michael Conforto, Nick Castellanos, and Seiya Suzuki, but with only $15 million to spend before surpassing the luxury tax threshold, signing any of these guys seemed like a pipe dream, especially after acquiring DH Luke Voit in a trade with the Yankees. So it appeared that Jurickson Profar was going to take the reins in left field. Not exactly a perfect solution. And also, there was still one big problem.
Fernando drives one to center field. Pavin Smith is back. Third home run of the night for Fernando.
We are following breaking news out of baseball where Padres star Fernando Tatis Jr. fractured his wrist in the offseason. And Tatis could miss now up to 3 months.
As the result of a motorcycle accident just before the lockout began in early December, the Padres were going to be without Fernando Tatis Jr. until at least mid-June. In the meantime, this meant second-year player Ha-Sung Kim was going to be the everyday shortstop. While his fielding ability was elite, there were question marks on how much he could improve his hitting, particularly against high velocity. In the weeks leading up to the regular season, the Padres made some more moves. A trade was made for starting pitcher Sean Manaea, a reunion with manager Bob Melvin. A couple days later, Victor Caratini, who made the majority of the catching starts in 2021, was traded to the Brewers. Then, in a pretty shocking trade, the Padres dealt out Chris Paddock and Emilio Pagan for all-star reliever Taylor Rogers and outfielder Brent Rooker. With former top prospect Mackenzie Gore dominating his spring training outings, as well as a bunch of players coming back from injury in the near future, Paddock was expendable. Overall, these new-look Padres had promise, and the next objective was assessing where everyone fits on the team. On opening day, Yu Darvish was given the role as the #1 starter, and he returned the favor with 6 no-hit innings. Since the 9th inning wasn't a save situation, manager Bob Melvin felt this was a great time to introduce Robert Suarez.
Back-to-back walks to open up the bottom of the 9th inning. Now a wild pitch has runners at second and third with nobody out. Look out, and he gets hit to load the bases.
That one gets behind Nola. Here comes Walker, and McCarthy's got third. And now the tie runs 90 feet away. Set Beer. Fly ball. Right field. Good night, everybody.
In hindsight, this wasn't the best decision. However, this was only the first game of the season. For the rest of the month, the Padres established themselves as a team to watch out for, ending the month fighting the Giants and Dodgers for first place. And if there was any player that deserved recognition, it was Manny Machado.
In the air to left field for Machado. His 5th hit of the game is a home run! A 2-run shot! A 5-hit night for Manny Machado! Man, oh man, oh Manny!
With Tatis out of the picture, Machado stepped up to lead this lineup. Although apart from Machado, the Padres lineup production was interesting to say the least. While many guys were struggling to start the season, Eric Hosmer was playing some of his best baseball ever seen in a Padres uniform. A guy who many Padres fans had grown tired of watching due to his big contract and underwhelming play at times. Also, Ha-Sung Kim, Tatis's replacement, was hitting like a bona fide major leaguer. Coupled with his elite defense, he'd be a tough guy to take out of the lineup when Tatis presumably comes back in a couple months. Another guy who was surpassing expectations was Jurickson Profar, not just with his bat, but his glove as well. In a 5-game period in late April, Profar threw out 4 runners on outfield assists. Not bad for someone who had less than 100 career starts in left field prior to the season. One of these moments came in a decisive extra inning game against the Dodgers, as Profar threw out Chris Taylor for a double play. The Padres went on to win this game on a walk-off sacrifice fly from Austin Nola. Speaking of walk-offs, there's someone you're gonna see quite a bit throughout this video. Someone who became sort of a cult hero for the Padres, Jorge Alfaro.
Base hit into left field for Abrams, and the inning continues. High drive, deep left center field. How far will Alfaro send this one? Gone! Happy Mother's Day!
As the Padres hit 2 more walk-off hits before the end of May, they were successfully holding on to their second-place position in the NL West, including some big series wins against the Braves, Phillies, and Giants. Then, after a tough series against the Cardinals, they got some series wins against the Brewers and Mets, 2 potential playoff teams. In particular, Joe Musgrove's no-hit bid on June 3rd was a notable highlight during this span. In fact, Musgrove's hot start to the season put pressure on the front office to re-sign him before reaching free agency. Overall, by mid-June, the Padres season was going very well. In other words, you could call it historic. On June 14th, the Padres were 39-24, the franchise's best ever record through the first 63 games of a season, which ultimately led to a 4-game sweep against the Cubs. However, following a play on June 19th, everything came to a halt.
Out to play it, Sensatella's throw off the mark, and Manny goes down. Bit of a collision, and Manny Machado is down. He is in some pain.
I gotta be honest, when I saw this live, I thought the season was over. Blake Snell said when it happened, everyone's heart dropped. You know how important he is to the team and what he means to the team. The Padres had a great record, but many hitters who started the season hot had cooled down, and Tatis wasn't healing as quickly as everyone hoped. In short, a long-term Machado injury jeopardized any chance for a playoff spot. But the Padres refused to give up.
Alfaro grounded into left field. It's Okar coming around. The throw. It's late. Padres win.
Haiku on the beat.
Alfaro hits one to deep left center field. Slater score. Padres win 2-1.
I think they're waiting for something. Let's fucking go San Diego!
Not only did Machado return after missing only 9 games, in order to ensure he could play in a crucial series against the Dodgers, he was driven from Phoenix to LA, as flying typically increases swelling in the body. Overall, the fact Machado was back less than 2 weeks after his injury was astounding. Unfortunately, the series itself didn't go well, as the Dodgers took 3 out of the 4 games, ultimately leading to a poor stretch of results to close out the first half of the season. With a wildcard spot to hold for the remainder of the year, there were plenty of questions that needed to be answered. Despite the setbacks from a few pitching injuries, the Padres pitching staff was above average. However, to beat teams like the Dodgers, Mets, and Braves in the playoffs, more needed to be done, particularly in the closer role. Taylor Rogers started off the season as MLB's save leader, but following a blown save on May 28th, Rogers struggled mightily. As for the hitting core, they had their own set of issues. For a group that drew a lot of walks, this team left many runners on base and couldn't really hit for power, as they ranked terribly in slugging percentage. So this team needed to add some power bats, either at catcher, first base, or in the outfield. Well, there were some rumblings that the Nationals were considering trading away franchise cornerstone Juan Soto, a perfect fit considering he's a right fielder with superstar hitting tools. Just imagine Machado, Soto, and a returning Tatis. What a trio that could be. Although acquiring Soto was a huge long shot, as the Nationals would likely demand the largest prospect package in MLB history, and there was no real confirmation they would even trade him. It's an interesting idea, but let's just move on. Overall, this team needed a lot of work to become a real championship contender, and with them losing games to teams like the Rockies and Tigers, these upgrades needed to come sooner rather than later. The first move the front office made was one that had been rumored since the beginning of the year: a 5-year extension for Joe Musgrove. Considering the competitive market for starting pitching, this was a pretty fair deal for both sides. Then, not too long after, the Padres made their first trade of the week, and let's just say it was a bit unexpected. Josh Hader, one of the best closers in baseball, was heading to the Padres in a deal involving Taylor Rogers, Dinelson Lamet, and 2 prospects. Admittedly, he was struggling in recent appearances, but given his track record, he should be okay. And more importantly, the Padres have a legitimate closer for 2022 and 2023. But then, on the morning of the trade deadline, AJ Preller made the deal many thought couldn't be done.
Hello and welcome to an impromptu episode of Talkin' Baseball. The big trade has gone down.
JP Morosi reporting that Juan Soto and Josh Bell are headed to the San Diego Padres.
This is an incredible trade. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. That is the best trade deadline this game of baseball has ever seen.
After weeks of rumors, Juan Soto was dealt to the Padres in one of the biggest trades in baseball history. A multitude of young big leaguers, top prospects, and future top prospects is what it took to acquire one of the best players in baseball. However, the deal didn't end there. The Padres also acquired first baseman Josh Bell, a power hitter who had been on fire all season. But whose spot would he take? Well, the initial version of this trade had Eric Hosmer being sent to the Nationals, but he used his no-trade clause to reject it, so Luke Voit was sent over instead. Later on, Hosmer was traded to the Red Sox, with basically his entire contract being paid by the Padres. Oh, and right before the deadline passed, the Padres also acquired Brandon Drury from the Reds. You know, a guy who had 20 home runs and could play every infield position apart from shortstop. Following all of these trades and the doubleheader wins against the Rockies on the same day, the Padres had a 96.4% chance of making the playoffs, a season high. Now, with the trade deadline finally out of the way, all that was left to do was for these guys to make their Padres debuts.
They'll take a 4-pitch walk instead. Second and third with one away for Josh Bell, his debut. In the dirt, ball 4, bases loaded, filled with Friars.
Now the 0-1. And Cronenworth hit on the back foot, and that'll get Soto home.
Brandon Drury, his first debut in a Padres uniform. Drury to left field. Connor Joe going back. Brandon Drury now plays in Slam Diego.
The introduction of this new offense couldn't have gone any better. And with Tatis playing minor league rehab games, it was going to be a lot more exciting very soon. For now, the Padres had their eyes set on a 3-game series against the Dodgers in LA. How would this new look team perform against the juggernaut they've desperately wanted to take down? Well, it didn't look so good. And by that, I mean the Padres were swept. Owner Peter Seidler called the Dodgers the dragon up the freeway that were trying to slay. However, maybe the Padres just weren't good enough. But that could easily change with the introduction of Tatis in the lineup, right? Yeah, Fernando Tatis Jr. was suspended for a failed PED test. After missing the first half of the season due to injury, Tatis was going to miss the rest of the 2022 season and then some. Whether you believe the ringworm story or not, all that mattered was that the current team the Padres had was the final product. The trio of Machado, Soto, and Tatis was on hold until 2023. Even worse, the following couple weeks worth of games weren't very good as the Padres' playoff odds diminished to a season low of 64.6% on August 28th after a loss to the Royals. Flashbacks to the 2021 collapse were beginning to creep in. But let's backtrack for a second. The Padres' loss against the Royals was game 129 of the season. In 2021, the Padres played their 129th game on August 25th. At that time, the team's playoff odds were at 27%, crashing from 80.2% just a couple weeks prior. With the extra wildcard spot added before the 2022 season, the Padres had a much better chance of making the playoffs this time around. However, there were still some glaring issues. First off, many of the team's major trade acquisitions were underperforming, most notably Josh Hader, who was on the worst streak of his career. Looking at the rotation, while Blake Snell had a second half resurgence and Darvish was still as consistent as ever, Musgrove and Minaya were both struggling. As for the batters, they had a knack for leaving runners on base. As of August 20th, they not only led the league with most runners left on base, they led the majors in games with at least 10 runners stranded, a total of 29 games. Still, August was a solid month for the Padres, and they were entering September with a 2.5-game lead in the final wildcard spot. However, their upcoming schedule was considered the toughest schedule left among National League contenders. Overall, the chances of making the playoffs this time around were much higher than in 2021. But like 2021, one string of bad results could define the entire season. Well, following a loss to the Diamondbacks on September 15th, which came after multiple series losses to the Dodgers, frustrations came to a breaking point. The normally stoic Bob Melvin called out his team for its lack of intensity, surprising some in the room with an uncharacteristic outpouring of frustration. The following day, if you walked into the clubhouse, you would see 3 words circled on the whiteboard. Burn the ships. Just leave everything behind. You've got one way to go. Can't go back. You've got to do it now. A quote by Jake Cronenworth. Once this mindset was adopted, it lit a fire under this team. It wasn't a perfect run, but the Padres did enough to maintain their wildcard spot through the end of the month. As the Padres possessed a tiebreaker over the Brewers, who lost to the Marlins off a comeback grand slam on September 29th, the Padres were in a great spot to clinch their first normal season playoff spot since 2006. Well, thankfully for the Padres, the Marlins were not making it easy for the Brewers.
Cronenworth to right field. Sheets going back to the warning track. It's gone! Into the Crone zone. Hey, struck him out. The Padres win. The magic number is 1. Tomorrow, the Padres could clinch.
And he struck him out, outlasting the Brewers 4-3 and taking 3 out of 4.
Here the Milwaukee Brewers have lost. So for the second time in 3 years, the Padres are going back to the postseason in 2022.
Our goal was to win a World Series. There's steps along the way, right? We got to the first one here. We got to the first one. There's a few more to party with, but I'll tell you what, the first one should be celebrated and celebrated hard. Drink up, man.
The Padres clinched their second playoff appearance in 3 seasons and ended the year with an 89-73 record. But before we head into the playoffs, we need a season summary. Manny Machado not only played his best Padres season to date, he had an MVP level season. Around him, you got Cronenworth, who wasn't as good offensively as previous seasons, but he made up for it with his glove at second base. Then you got the emergence of Kim and Profar, 2 guys who were put into tough situations, but were key to this team's success. Will Myers' possible final season as a Padre wasn't amazing, but he ended the season on a hot streak, something that may carry over to the playoffs. Then there's the trade deadline acquisitions. Soto was very good, but he wasn't the best version of Juan Soto. He was walking a lot, but he wasn't getting many extra base hits. Still, he was someone the Padres needed to perform in the playoffs. As for Drury, his versatility and power came into play, but not as much as everyone hoped for. And the same can be said for Josh Bell, too. As for Austin Nola and Trent Grisham, they were underwhelming offensively, but defensively, Grisham was one of the best defenders in baseball, and Nola had become the trusted catcher for this pitching staff. Overall, this lineup had massive potential if some of these players can get hot, but the regular season numbers couldn't be ignored. Yes, this team's plate discipline was excellent, but it doesn't matter if you're leaving all those runners on base. Still, anything can happen in the playoffs, especially when you have a pitching staff as deep as this one. The trio of Darvish, Snell, and Musgrove is perfect for a 3-game wildcard series, but in a 5 or 7 game series, you have to hope Clevenger or Manaea can step up to the occasion. As for the bullpen, they all clicked at the right time. Hader was dominant in his final month of appearances. Nick Martinez moved from the rotation to the bullpen and excelled. Robert Suarez was a completely different pitcher following his debut, turning into one of the most underrated, dominant relievers in baseball. Then you got flamethrower Luis Garcia, Tim Hill and his funky delivery, another successful rookie, Steven Wilson, and then some choices on who to add to the playoff roster. Regardless, whoever this team placed on their playoff roster, they had a tough opponent to deal with. The 101-win New York Mets. While their momentum was a bit stunted after a sweep to the Braves caused them to lose first place in the NL East, they were still a dangerous team. The combo of DeGrom and Scherzer in a 3-game series is an incredibly tough matchup for any team. Overall, this series was the true test to see if the Padres were contenders or pretenders.
2 away with Profar still at first base. Cleanup hitter is Josh Bell.
That one is laced deep to left field, and this one may get out of here. It does! Bell on a 3-1 pitch, and it carries over the wall. Trent Grisham's 18th on the year, and that's fair, and it's gone. 3 more runs for the Padres. Will it stay high enough? It does. Another home run by the Padres. Called strike 3. That's how it ends. Bell on the ground. Alonso. He will flip, and the Mets will survive. They win it 7-3. And tomorrow night, the rubber game to see who stays alive. Buck Showalter is walking onto the field. They bring Melvin out. They're checking the glove. Musgrove, they'll look at the hat. They're checking his ears. Appears to have yielded nothing. And he hits that fair down the third baseline. And Juan Soto adds 2 more. 1-2 from Hader. Marte rolls it over. Machado. San Diego will sail into the division series as they come to New York and win 2 out of 3 here at Citi Field.
If there's anything I got out of this series, it's that Trent Grisham and Joe Musgrove will forever be booed at Citi Field. All in all, this team performed when it mattered most, leading to a series win and a place in the NLDS against a familiar foe, the LA Dodgers. What else can you say about this team? 111 wins, and they absolutely dominated the Padres in the regular season. When the Dodgers beat the Padres in Game 1 in pretty convincing fashion, it seemed like the same old story was being told. However, as manager Bob Melvin told Padres players, the regular season is over. Everybody starts at 0. All that mattered was the next game. The objective of Game 2 was simple: tie the series, and head back to Petco Park with the chance of winning the series at home. It wasn't easy. It was a back and forth game, and the Dodgers had their chances to take the lead. But the Padres came out on top, and they left LA with a new purpose and a new mascot, the Goose. The Padres now had the golden opportunity to clinch their place in the NLCS in San Diego against the team both the Padres and the fan base had wanted to conquer for so long. With the series on the line, could the Padres finally slay the dragon once and for all?
One, two. Did he go? He did. Inning over. Runners go. And a flare into center field will get down for a base hit. Soto will score. Goes out to the first pitch. Sends it to right. It's 2-0.
Suarez ready. Here's the pitch. Muncy swings and misses. Strike 3. 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
He's struck out. Padres take game 3. 18 years this park has stood. No fan has seen a playoff win from one of these seats until this night. Hard hit to left field. Profar is back. That'll be deep enough. Betts will take off from third to make it 3-0 Los Angeles.
3-minute second. Trey Turner at third. And Justin Turner at the plate to face Tim Hill. Turner swings. It's a ground ball to shortstop. Kim kind of hesitated. Then he comes in. And the throw to first in plenty of time. The inning is over.
Bouncing ball right side. Off the glove of Freeman. And a run will score. Kim bounces it towards third. It's a fair ball. Grisham will score. On his way to third is Nola. Into second base, Kim. It's a one-run game in the 7th. Soto in the right field. This will tie the game. Quarterback to center field. Padres take the lead. Kim is in. Here comes Soto. Off the mound. 5-3 Padres.
The 0-2. Check swing on a ball down and in. They appeal. He went one away. Turner swings and misses into slider. Strike 3.
Hader to Freeman. He is struck out for the first time in 24 years. The San Diego Padres are headed to the National League Championship Series.
They finally did it. While not every player was consistently playing well, it took a full team effort of timely, clutch performances to beat the Dodgers. And the Padres were now one series away from their first World Series appearance in over 2 decades. So, who was their opponent? The Philadelphia Phillies. Both of these teams entered this series with momentum, and they were hungry for a spot in the World Series. Well, unfortunately for the Padres, it didn't go as planned.
On the 7th pitch, Harper hits one in the air, left center field. Harper, the swing of his life!
The Padres just could never get the upper hand in this series, and it cost them a chance at a World Series championship. You could even say when Suarez gave up that home run, the season ended right there. However, like Suarez's season, you can't fully judge the 2022 Padres based off how the season began or how it ended. It's about the journey. The entirety of the Padres 2022 season was filled with chaos, but it made for one of the most memorable and exciting seasons in San Diego sports history. Like the conclusion of the 2021 season, the Padres enter this offseason with lots of questions. However, this time around, after experiencing the postseason firsthand, they're going to be even more motivated to get back to the playoffs and progress even further in 2023. Perhaps even winning a championship. But that's a story for next year. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching.